There's a new podcast live streaming mixer recorder audio interface in town. That is the Mackie DLZ Creator XS. Let's jump right in and talk about how this performs and how it's different than the original and how it compares to the RODECaster Pro line and the ZOOM Podtrak line. Now, first up, this has 3 different modes, just like the original Creator. It has an easy, enhanced, and pro mode, so you can tune that for whatever your skill level with audio is. That's a great little thing. Automatic gain setting, you just push a button, talk into your microphone, and it sets the gain for you, and it does a good job. So that's a nice feature as well. The DLZ Creator XS is half the size, pretty much, of the original DLZ, which makes it nice and compact, which is really nice. But they still maintain to have a 7-inch screen, which is still bigger than the RODECaster Pro II screen or any of the screens on the ZOOM Podtrak recorder. So it's a really nice screen, has an anti-glare finish to it. I've never found it to be a problem in my live streams where I have lights set up. Glare is not an issue. In some of those others, it can be an issue at times. Now, how did they make this so much smaller, and what do you give up? First of all, it has 2 XLR combination inputs for microphones, line level inputs, so if you want to feed audio from another mixer, or instruments. So instead of having the 4 inputs that the original DLZ Creator has, this is down to 2. So in many ways, this is like a RODECaster Duo. Otherwise, the other things that they've done is they have gone to rotary knob faders instead of linear faders. Linear faders, some people that are new to audio will often call those sliders. They're actually linear faders. And the way they save a lot of space on this unit is they use the rotary knob faders instead. You have 5 of them. The first 2 control the XLR combination inputs, and the other 3 are actually assignable. They can control an input from a phone, from a computer, and then the 5th one also controls the playback volume, if you will, of the pads that you can use to playback sounds or to actually trigger effects as well. That's a new thing on this latest version. The microphone inputs supply up to 80 decibels of gain, which is an enormous amount of gain. One question that I often get for these podcast recorders is, can I use my Shure SM7B or use a Shure SM7B with this? And do I need a cloud lifter or a FET head to boost the level of that very, very gain-hungry microphone? And the answer is no, you do not need a cloud lifter or a FET head. The Mackie DLZ Creator XS can supply all the gain that your Shure SM7B or any other dynamic microphone needs. There are 2 1/4-inch balanced audio outputs for monitors or to feed to a camera that has balanced inputs, and that's what I use for my live stream. Very nice feature. It's a true line level signal. On the RODECaster, it wasn't quite line level. It's doing something a little bit odd there on the RODECaster Pro II, and this one is actually line level, which is really, really helpful. So if you are going to feed the audio directly from your mixer like the Creator XS into your camera, then this makes it a little easier. Now, if you're using consumer-grade cameras with 3.5mm microphone inputs, that's a different story. We have a video over here that you can go look at to show how to adapt the output from any of these mixers, including the DLZ Creator XS, into that camera. It does have 6 pads here to play back any sort of music or pre-recorded material, sound effects, or to also trigger different effects. So just like the RODECaster Pro II uses those to trigger effects, you can now do that on the Mackie DLZ Creator as well. One magic feature that the Mackie DLZ got earlier this year and that the DLZ Creator XS, it's a lot of words. I'm going to drop the Creator. So the DLZ XS also has NDI audio support, which means you can send audio via Ethernet out of the DLZ Creator over to your computer or to another Mackie DLZ or any other NDI-enabled device. And likewise, you can receive an NDI stream of audio into the DLZ XS and, of course, the original DLZ as well. So really, really nice feature, not something you see on any of the other podcasting, live streaming mixers that I have experience with. Just like its bigger brother, the XS also has Automix for those 2 microphone inputs, and it just makes recording multiple people in the same room, each on their own microphone, a little bit cleaner. Each of those inputs also have a variety of different processing effects. So there's equalizers, there's a noise gate, a compressor, and a de-esser on each of those inputs. Plus on the main mix, there's also an EQ and an additional compressor, which is useful if you are recording multiple people, because then when people say, for example, talk over each other or laugh, having that output compressor on the main bus is really helpful to manage that and prevent you from getting any sort of distortion or clipping. I should say too that on these effects here, I find these easier to dial them in and get the sound that I want than on the RODECaster. Just a personal thing. That may be a different experience for you, but I found these a little easier to work with. You do have the 4 different context knobs, which makes it a little bit easier. So instead on the RODECaster, you have a single big knob, and you have to press it to kind of scroll through to get to the particular setting you want to set, and then you can set it. On this one, you have 4 different knobs, and depending on the menu that you're in, they're context aware. So one, for example, when you go into the compressor, the top one is for threshold, the second one's for ratio, the third one's for attack, and the fourth one is for release. So that's a pretty nice thing. I should note that's one thing you give up on the XS version of the DLZ versus the original DLZ. On the original DLZ, you have 5 knobs. On the XS, you have 4. So that makes things a little bit different. Now, for those that are live streaming, sometimes you have to delay the audio in your whole setup so that it's in sync with the video, because video takes a while to get out of the camera via HDMI, and audio is pretty much closer to instantaneous. So there is a delay feature here. You can delay up to 250 milliseconds to get your audio in sync with your video, or you can do it in encoding apps like OBS if you prefer to do it that way. This is a full USB audio interface, so when you connect it to your computer, it is 14 channels, including a stereo mix and each of the individual inputs. And you can also record to a USB thumb drive or to the micro SD card in the Mackie DLZ. And you can record either just a stereo mix, or you can record all of the individual channels plus a stereo mix. So you have all the freedom in the world to do it however you want. If you just want a stereo mix, you want to keep it simple, you can do that. If you want to be able to have all of the individual channels in post-production so that you can tweak them very meticulously, you can do that as well. If you have remote guests that you're bringing in via your phone or a computer, and you want to make sure that they don't hear themselves echoing back as they talk, there is a mix minus feature, and it's literally just one switch. You tap it, and that takes care of that issue altogether. So no complex setup, no mind-bending trying to figure out what does mix minus even mean or do. If you've got a remote guest via phone or computer, just turn on mix minus for that channel and it's taken care of. For those that are really hardcore about this, you can set up custom headphone mixes. So for each of the 2 headphone outputs, you can do a custom mix. These headphone outputs are fantastic. They are able to drive 300 ohm headphones with no problem whatsoever. So you can use pretty much any headphones you'd like with these, and you're going to get great results. The preamplifiers that you connect your microphone to in the XS are extraordinarily clean. We've connected a dummy XLR connector with a 150 ohm resistor across pins 2 and 3, cranked it up to 76 dB, and it came out to minus 71 dB RMS max, which is very, very clean. If that doesn't make any sense to you whatsoever, these are clean preamplifiers. You're not going to have to worry about them making a lot of hiss and noise in your recordings. Instead, you're going to need to manage your room and make sure you're not getting a lot of noise in your room, and also use a microphone that doesn't generate a lot of its own self-noise. But the Mackie does great. The build is mostly plastic with a little bit of metal here and there. It's good. I've had the Mackie DLZ, the original, for about 9 months now, and it's held up beautifully. The XS looks to be made of the same materials, and I have confidence that it'll hold up nicely. In the package, you get the mixer itself, an AC adapter, a USB-C to USB-A cable, and it comes in at $499 US at the time of this review. Now, no product is perfect. Let's talk about some of the cons that I've run into. First of all, unlike the original DLZ, there is no physical master fader on the XS version, which is a little bit of a bummer for me. I sometimes use that on my live streams to fade out at the end, for example. It's a little bit harder. You have a virtual version of it on your screen, but tapping and dragging on a screen is never quite the same as doing it with a physical fader. That's not going to be an issue for some people, but just so that you're aware. Secondly, there is some latency. If I connect up I'm not going to go through the whole procedure. If you're interested in understanding how I measured latency from the input to the output on the DLZ Creator, and by output I mean specifically the 1/4 inch line outputs here, we found that there's a latency of 5 milliseconds. So from the time a sound goes into the microphone until it comes out of one of those 1/4 inch outputs, it's 5 milliseconds. If you compare that to the RODECaster Pro II, that came in at 6 milliseconds. The original DLZ also came in at 5 milliseconds, and the original RODECaster came in at 3 milliseconds. So just so you're aware, there is some latency here. It's not going to be a problem for most people. Some people listening on headphones find that delay problematic and disorienting. I don't generally find it to be a problem, but just so that you're aware. On the back of the DLZ XS, just like the original DLZ, there is no 3.5mm stereo unbalanced output for consumer level cameras. That'd be a really nice addition. I'd love to see some of these recorders include that. It would just make it so much easier to connect it directly to your camera and not have to worry about audio sync issues at all. So maybe in the next generation, love to see it. Unlike the RODECaster Pro and II and the Duo, there is no mounting tap, like a threaded tap, 3/8 inch on the bottom, and there's no VESA mounting either. So I don't know if Mackie has plans to create some way to mount this like that, but as of right now, there is no way to do that. And then finally, con for some people, not necessarily for others, you do need to use the included power supply. It's not powered via USB-C like the RODECaster Pro II is. So that means that you cannot, at least natively out of the box, power this with a USB battery bank. So if that's super, super important to you, if you're going to be recording out in the Sahara Desert with no power, then you're going to need another solution that the XS doesn't provide on its own. Okay, so if you're trying to make a choice about what to buy, and a 2-input mixer for your live streams or for your podcast is enough. And I think actually unless you're doing a big podcast with lots of people, like 4 people or more, there are some considerations. So let me just give you my perspective. It's my totally biased perspective, I'm telling you now. And I will also tell you that I purchased the RODECaster Pro II with my own money. The Mackie DLZ XS was given to me by Mackie. They did not charge me for it. They're not paying me to make this review, but they also they gave this to me for free, and I don't have to give it back. So just want to be 100% transparent about that. I've also had the Mackie DLZ, the original, for, again, about 9 months now. They gave that to me as well in exchange for making the review that I made for that. So that's the context from which I'm coming. I have a choice every single week when I do my live stream on my Curtis Judd audio channel. And I can use the RODECaster Pro II, I can use the Mackie DLZ, I can use the Mackie DLZ XS. I have some beautiful rack mount gear here. I have a Rupert Neve designed Shelford channel, I can use that. I've got a DBX 286S, I can use that. I've got a Universal Audio, I've got a lot of things that I can choose from. And 95% of the live streams that I've done in the last 9 months, I've used the Mackie DLZ as the mixer for my audio. And then going forward, I think that's mostly going to be the DLZ XS because I typically only need 2 microphone inputs, one for me, one for Danny, and that's all. And so if I have a choice of all those things, why do I generally choose the DLZ? And I think the answer is really for our workflow, it's the easiest one. It works, it does everything we need it to, and it's easy. And it sounds great. So that's what it comes down to. Now, we listed a bunch of other features before. What I'm going to do is I'm going to put a link in the description. If you want to go look at a grid that actually compares the RODECaster Pro II to the original DLZ to the DLZ XS, you can go look at that, and that'll really kind of break it down for you for the details. But that's generally what works best for me. Now, another thing that's changed in the landscape since I reviewed the original Mackie DLZ is that Mackie and Rode are now the same company. Rode bought Mackie. So there's still, I don't know how this is going to play out in the long run, but I'm hopeful that the DLZ stays around because I really like it. I prefer it over the RODECaster Pro II. I'm not pulling any punches there. It's just what I prefer. Do I mean to imply that that's the best choice for everybody? No. If there are some features on the RODECaster Pro II that are absolutely critical to you, like the ability to VESA mount it, like the ability to power it via USB battery bank, and by the way, it's not just any battery bank. It has to be a power delivery bank that can supply, I think it's 18 watts and certain amperage. So make sure you check that out if you're going to do that. But if being ultra portable and not having AC power and being able to power your mixer is important to you, take that into account. If you need something that can be a MIDI controller as well, RODECaster Pro II does that. Mackie DLZ, as of the time of this review, does not do that. As far as I'm aware, I couldn't find a way to do that. So just keep those things in mind. There are a lot of little things. Oh, if you're using the Rode Wireless Go 2 or Wireless Me or Wireless Pro and you want to be able to transmit that directly to your podcast mixer, then the RODECaster Pro II is your choice. Probably your best option there. So overall, that's how I look at these. Now, what about the ZOOM Podtrak? The ZOOM Podtraks are also capable. They're quirky is the way I would look at them from the perspective of someone who knows and has worked on a lot of different mixing boards over the years. they're fine. If you have one of those and you're getting good results from them, absolutely stick with it. Get out there and make some content. Quit wasting your time watching reviews like this to get justification that you chose the right mixer. If it's working for you, you chose the right mixer. So here's my overall impression with the ZOOM Podtrak recorders is that ZOOM does a really, really great job of power management. If you need something that can be USB battery bank powered, the ZOOM recorders do a great job at that. They're also very, very power efficient. They're very quirky when it comes to other things, though, from my perspective. Again, if it's working well for you, great. But on some of the Podtrak recorders, for example, you could only apply so many effects. And like if you enabled one, you couldn't enable another one. It was just weird. There's weird stuff like that. The other thing that's huge about the ZOOM Podtrak recorders is they're far less expensive. They're quite aged at this point as well, to be fair. Maybe they'll have new versions of them sometime soon. I don't know. But that's just something to keep in mind. If you're on a really, really tight budget and you can live with some of the quirkiness, then they're okay too. So go for it. If you want something that's a little bit more premium and you have the budget to spend, my personal preference is the DLZ XS in particular. I only need the 2 XLR combo inputs. If you need more inputs, there's the original DLZ with its amazing, beautiful, large, I think it's a 10.1 inch screen. And it has linear faders. It's it's beautiful to work with. And if you prefer the RODECaster Pro II and some of those very unique features that only the RODECaster Pro II has, well, then that's a nice touch as well. So hopefully that gives you some perspective. Again, there's no perfect device for every single person in every single situation. You have to choose what works best for you. But again, go check out that link below where it takes it to the grid that I share all of the kind of details about the different features. Hopefully that's useful for you. Get out there, make some great sound, and we'll talk to you again soon.